The fluorescent lights of the stop-and-go flickered at 2:47 a.m., casting sickly shadows across the candy aisle. Ben heard the bell chime and looked up from his calculus textbook, expecting another drunk looking for cigarettes or energy drinks. Instead, a girl burst through the door, barefoot, soaking wet, eyes wild with terror. She didn't browse, didn't shop. She vaulted over the counter in one desperate motion, landing hard on her knees beside him. "He's coming," she gasped, grabbing Ben's arm with trembling fingers. "Please, I need to hide. Now." Ben's mouth opened to ask who, but the words died in his throat. Through the rain-streaked window, he saw a figure crossing the parking lot. Slow, deliberate, a man in a dark jacket, hands in his pockets, walking like he had all the time in the world. The girl's fingernails dug into Ben's forearm. "Please." Ben was 20 years old, drowning in student loans, making $11.50 an hour to stock shelves and mop floors. He had no training for this. No protocol. No backup coming for at least 20 minutes. Even if he called 911 right now, he could point to the door, tell her to keep running, stay out of it. Instead, he grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the back. "Walk in cooler. Lock it from the inside. Don't make a sound no matter what you hear." She disappeared into the darkness of the storage room just as the bell chimed again. The man stepped inside, water dripping from his jacket onto the worn linoleum. He was maybe 35, clean-cut, ordinary-looking. The kind of guy you wouldn't glance at twice in a grocery store. He smiled at Ben. A normal, friendly smile that made Ben's skin crawl. "Evening," the man said, walking slowly toward the register. "Crazy weather, huh?" Ben forced himself to sit back down, pick up his textbook, look bored. "Yeah. Need something?" "Actually, yeah." The man stopped at the counter, still smiling. "I'm looking for my girlfriend. She ran this way. About 5'6", dark hair, probably barefoot. She's not well. Having an episode. I need to get her home, get her medication." Ben didn't look up from his book. "Haven't seen anyone. Been dead all night." "You sure?" The man's voice remained pleasant, conversational. "Because I know she came in here. I've been following her for 3 blocks. That's when Ben noticed the mud. A small footprint near the edge of the counter, still wet, toe-shaped. The girl's footprint. The man's eyes followed Ben's gaze. They both saw it at the same time. The smile never left the man's face, but something changed in his eyes. Something cold and final. "So," he said softly, reaching into his jacket. "Where is she?" Ben's hand moved to the aluminum baseball bat under the counter, the one the owner kept there for robberies that never happened. What Ben didn't know was that the terrified girl shivering in his walk-in cooler wasn't just anyone's girlfriend. She was Chloe Davidson, daughter of Marcus Reaper Davidson, president of the Black Scorpions Motorcycle Club. And her father was exactly 7 minutes away. The man pulled out a 6-inch hunting knife. Ben gripped the bat. The clock on the wall read 2:49 a.m. This was going to be the longest 7 minutes of Ben's life. Ben had been working the graveyard shift at the stop-and-go for 8 months, and he'd learned to love the silence. From 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., 4 nights a week, the store was his. No manager hovering over his shoulder. No demanding customers complaining about expired coupons. Just him, the hum of the industrial refrigerators, and whatever textbook he was currently failing to understand. Tonight, it was differential equations. Ben stared at the same problem for the 3rd time, trying to remember if he was supposed to use the chain rule, or the product rule, or just give up and switch majors to something that didn't require calculus. The store sat on Route 9, a 4-lane road that connected the city to a handful of rural towns nobody cared about. During the day, there was decent traffic, commuters, truckers, families heading to the state park. At night, especially on a Wednesday in October, the road was a river of darkness punctuated by occasional headlights. The nearest police station was 12 miles north. The nearest hospital was 15 miles south. The owner, Mr. Chung, had installed cameras and a silent alarm system after the store got robbed in 2019, but Ben had never needed to use either. Mostly he just restocked shelves, mopped floors, and tried to stay awake until dawn. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, one of them flickering in a steady rhythm that had been driving Ben slowly insane for weeks. The radio played classic rock at low volume, Mr. Chung's rule, something about deterring robberies, and right now it was halfway through a Fleetwood Mac song that Ben had heard approximately 7,000 times. He checked his phone. 2:31 a.m. 5 more hours. Ben rubbed his eyes and looked around the store. Aisles of chips and candy bars. A wall of refrigerated drinks. A coffee machine that hadn't been cleaned properly in years. A rack of magazines that nobody bought anymore. A lottery ticket dispenser that saw more action than anything else in the building. This was his life. This was what a bachelor's degree in engineering cost. $50,000 in student loans and counting. Working minimum wage to afford ramen and textbooks. Living in an apartment with 3 roommates who stole his food. He'd applied to internships. All rejected. He'd applied to better jobs. All rejected. So here he was, 20 years old, sitting behind a counter at 2:30 in the morning, trying to understand mathematics that felt like a foreign language. The rain had started around midnight, a cold October downpour that hammered the roof and turned the parking lot into a shallow lake. Ben watched the water stream down the windows, distorting the streetlights into abstract blurs of orange and white. Nobody was coming tonight. Nobody was stupid enough to drive in this weather for a Slurpee and a pack of cigarettes. He was alone. Ben actually liked being alone. It gave him time to think, to study, to exist without the constant pressure of classes and deadlines and professors who seemed personally offended that he didn't immediately grasp concepts they'd spent decades mastering. The bell above the door chimed. Ben sighed and looked up, ready to greet whatever drunk or insomniac had decided to brave the storm. A girl stumbled through the door. Not walked. Stumbled. Like she'd been running and her legs had finally given out. She was young, maybe 19, 20, with long dark hair plastered to her face and neck. She wore jeans and a tank top, both soaked through, and no shoes. Her feet were muddy, cut, bleeding. But it was her eyes that made Ben's stomach drop. Wide. Terrified. The eyes of someone who'd seen something terrible and was still seeing it. She didn't browse. Didn't look around. She looked directly at Ben, and then she ran, a desperate sprint across the store, her wet feet slapping against the linoleum. Ben stood up, knocking his textbook to the floor. Hey, are you? She vaulted over the counter in one fluid motion, landing hard on her knees beside him, grabbing his arm with both hands. He's coming, she whispered, her voice raw and breaking. He's right behind me. Please, I need to hide. Please. Ben's mind raced. His first instinct was to call the police, but she was shaking so badly she could barely stand, and through the window he could see a figure, a man, walking across the parking lot through the rain. Not running. Walking. Slow. Confident. Please, the girl whispered again, and there was something in her voice, pure, animal terror, that made Ben's decision for him. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the back of the store, past the aisles, through the employee door, into the storage room where Mr. Chung kept the overstock and the walk-in cooler. In there, Ben said, opening the cooler door. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of frozen food and cardboard. Lock it from the inside. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Understand? She nodded, teeth chattering, and stumbled into the cooler. Ben closed the door and heard the lock click. Then he took a breath, grabbed a bottle of glass cleaner and a rag from the shelf, and walked back out to the counter. He needed to look normal. Bored. Like nothing had happened. The bell chimed. The man stepped inside. The first thing Ben noticed was how normal he looked. Mid-30s, maybe. Average height, average build. Clean-shaven, short brown hair, wearing a dark jacket and jeans. The kind of guy you'd pass on the street without a second glance. The kind of guy who'd help you carry groceries or hold the door open. Except for his eyes. They were wrong. Too calm. Too focused. Water dripped from his jacket onto the floor as he walked slowly toward the counter. He moved like he was in no hurry, like he had all the time in the world, like the desperate chase that had just ended here was nothing more than a casual evening stroll. He smiled at Ben. A normal, friendly smile. Evening, he said pleasantly. Crazy weather, huh? Ben forced himself to sit back down at the stool behind the register, pick up his textbook, look bored and disinterested. His heart was hammering so hard, he could hear it in his ears. Yeah, Ben said, trying to keep his voice steady. Need something? The man walked to the candy aisle, picked up a pack of gum, examined it like he actually cared about the flavor. Yeah, actually. I'm looking for someone. My girlfriend. She ran this way, about 5'6", dark hair, probably barefoot. She's not well. Having an episode. Ben didn't look up from his book. Haven't seen anyone. It's been dead all night. You sure? The man walked to the counter, set down the gum, pulled out a $5 bill. Still smiling. Because I've been following her for 3 blocks. I know she came in here. Like I said, man, nobody's been in since. Ben stopped. His eyes had dropped for just a second. Just 1 second. There, near the edge of the counter. A small footprint in the thin layer of water that had tracked in from outside. Recent. Fresh. The shape of a bare foot, toes clearly visible. The girl's footprint. The man's eyes followed Ben's gaze. They both saw it at the same time. For a moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the man's smile changed. It didn't disappear, it just became something else. Something colder. Sharper. So, he said softly, his hand moving to his jacket pocket. Where is she? Ben's hand dropped below the counter, fingers wrapping around the aluminum baseball bat Mr. Chung kept there. It was light, hollow, the kind of bat that would bend if you actually tried to hit a baseball with it. But it was all Ben had. Sir, I don't know what you're talking about, Ben said, his voice surprisingly steady. Maybe she went out the back, or... Don't. The word was quiet, but absolute. The man pulled his hand out of his jacket. He was holding a knife. 6 inches, maybe 7. Fixed blade. Hunting knife. Ben's grip tightened on the bat. The man placed the knife on the counter between them, casual as a set of car keys. I'm going to ask you one more time, nice and polite. Where is she? Ben's mouth was dry. His engineering textbook suddenly seemed incredibly stupid. All those equations and theories and abstractions that had nothing to do with this moment, this choice, this man with dead eyes standing 3 feet away. He could just point to the back. Say she's in the cooler. Walk away. This wasn't his problem. He made $11.50 an hour. Nobody would blame him. I already told you. Ben heard himself say. Nobody's been here. The man's smile finally disappeared. He picked up the knife. Wrong answer, kid. Inside the walk-in cooler, Chloe Davidson sat on the floor between boxes of frozen French fries and containers of ice cream, shivering so badly her teeth chattered. She'd pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them, trying to preserve what little body heat she had left. Her tank top was soaked through, her jeans heavy with water, and the cooler was set to approximately 35 degrees Fahrenheit. She could already feel the cold seeping into her bones. Through the thick door, she heard muffled voices. The clerk, the guy who'd helped her, whose name she didn't even know, talking to Greg. She couldn't make out the words, but she recognized the tone. Calm. Measured. Lying. Greg would know. Greg always knew when people were lying. Chloe's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked. She dropped it twice while running, but it still worked. Barely. The battery was at 18%. No signal. Of course no signal. The cooler was essentially a metal box designed to keep radio waves out along with heat. She stood up, her bare feet sticking slightly to the frozen floor, and climbed onto a stack of boxes, reaching toward the ceiling where the ventilation system connected. If she could get closer to the vent, maybe. One bar appeared. Flickered. Disappeared. Appeared again. Chloe's hands shook as she opened her contacts. She scrolled past friends, past her mother's number, her parents were divorced, past the useless 911 that would send police officers who might arrive in 20 minutes if they bothered to hurry. She tapped Dad. It rang once. Twice. Chloe. Her father's voice was instant, alert, the voice of a man who never truly slept. Where are you? It's almost 3 in the morning. Dad. Her voice cracked. Dad, he found me. Silence on the other end. Not empty silence. Dangerous silence. Who found you? Greg. He's here. I'm hiding at a stop and go on Route 9, the one near. I know it. Are you safe? I'm in the cooler in the back. The clerk is, Dad, the clerk is stalling him. He has a knife. Greg has a knife. Is the clerk hurt? I don't know. I can't hear. Dad, please hurry. I'm so cold and my phone is dying and I don't think the lock will. Chloe, listen to me. Her father's voice was steel. Command. The voice that made grown men obey without question. I'm 7 minutes out. Church is with me. We were already heading your direction. Stay in the cooler. Stay hidden. Do not come out until you hear my voice. Understand. The clerk. I'll handle the clerk. I'll handle everything. 7 minutes. Can you stay quiet for 7 minutes? Chloe wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Nodded even though he couldn't see her. Yes. Good girl. Stay on the line. She heard him shout something away from the phone. Orders. Rapid fire. the sound of engines revving in response. Then he was back. Still there. Still here. Tell me about this clerk. I don't know. Young. College kid, maybe. He didn't even hesitate. I jumped the counter, and he hid me. Didn't ask questions. He armed. I think he grabbed something. A bat, maybe. Dad, Greg is going to kill him. No, her father said, and there was something in his voice that Chloe had heard before. Something absolute. He isn't. In the background, she heard what sounded like thunder. But it wasn't thunder. It was the sound of 20 motorcycles accelerating in unison, engines roaring, pipes echoing off buildings. The Black Scorpions were coming. 6 minutes, her father said. Hold on, baby girl. Just hold on. Greg walked around the counter slowly, the knife held loosely in his right hand. Ben stood up, pulling the baseball bat with him, holding it in both hands like he'd seen people do in movies. He had no idea if that was actually the right way to hold it. He'd played exactly 0 baseball in his life. Kid, Greg said, his voice still conversational, almost friendly. You really want to die for minimum wage? I don't want to die at all, Ben said. But I'm not giving you whoever you're looking for. Her name is Chloe. She's my girlfriend. She's sick. Bipolar, paranoid. She stops taking her medication and has these episodes where she thinks I'm. Greg shook his head, looking pained. It's complicated. But I love her. I just want to help her. It sounded reasonable. Concerned. The kind of thing a worried boyfriend would say. Except Ben had seen Chloe's eyes. The kind of terror in them wasn't paranoia or delusion. It was recognition. She knew exactly who was chasing her. Call the police, Ben said. If she's having a medical emergency, call 911. They'll help. I did call them. They said they'd send someone, but you know how it is out here. 20 minutes, maybe 30. By then she could hurt herself. She's done it before. Greg took another step closer. Just tell me where she is. I'll take her home, get her the help she needs, and you can go back to your studying. Ben's eyes flicked to the phone on the wall behind the counter. The old landline Mr. Chung insisted on keeping just in case. He'd need both hands to dial, which meant putting down the bat. Greg saw him look. Smiled. Or you could try that, Greg said. But here's the thing, kid. You seem smart. Engineering student, right? I saw the textbook. So let's think through the math here. You reach for that phone. I'm over this counter before you finish dialing 9. You swing that bat. Maybe you get lucky, crack a rib. But then what? I'm still faster than you. Still armed. And I promise you, I've hurt people before. Have you? Ben's hands were sweating on the bat. His heart was hammering. Greg was right. Ben had never been in a fight in his life. The closest he'd come was a shoving match in middle school over a basketball. But he'd made a choice when he had Chloe. He couldn't unmake it now. I already called the cops, Ben lied. Silent alarm. They're on their way. Greg's expression didn't change. No, you didn't. Because if you had, you'd be stalling, not arguing. You'd be trying to keep me talking, keep me calm. Instead, you're holding that bat like you actually think you can use it. He vaulted over the counter in one smooth motion. Ben swung. The bat connected with Greg's shoulder. A solid hit that would have sent a baseball flying. Greg barely grunted. He caught the bat mid-swing with his left hand, yanked it, and Ben stumbled forward. The knife flashed. Ben felt a line of fire across his forearm. Not deep. Greg had pulled it. More of a warning than a serious cut, but blood welled up immediately, hot and shocking. Ben jerked back, pulling the bat free, and swung again wildly. This time Greg stepped inside the swing, too close for the bat to build momentum, and punched Ben in the stomach. Ben doubled over, gasping, the wind knocked completely out of him. The bat clattered to the floor. Greg kicked it away, grabbed Ben by his shirt, and slammed him back against the cigarette display. Packs of Marlboros rained down around them. Last chance, Greg said. The knife now pressed against Ben's throat. Close enough that Ben could feel the cold metal, could smell cigarette smoke and rain on Greg's jacket. Where is Chloe? Ben's vision was swimming. His arm was bleeding. His stomach felt like it had collapsed. Every rational part of his brain was screaming at him to just point to the back, to the cooler, to end this. He thought about Chloe's eyes, the terror in them. He thought about his mom, who'd raised him alone after his dad left, who'd worked 2 jobs to help pay for his college, who'd taught him that some things mattered more than safety. He looked Greg in the eyes and said, "Go to hell." Greg's expression hardened. The knife pressed harder. "Okay," Greg said quietly. "Hard way it is. That's when Ben felt it. A vibration. Faint at first, then stronger. The candy bars on the shelves started to rattle. The fluorescent lights flickered. Greg felt it too. He looked up, confused. The vibration became a rumble. The rumble became a roar. Through the rain-streaked windows, headlights appeared. Dozens of them. Bright and blinding, cutting through the darkness like knives. The sound of engines, deep, powerful, synchronized, filled the air like rolling thunder. Greg's face went pale. What the... The front window exploded inward as a motorcycle crashed through it. The bike was a Harley-Davidson, a massive black and chrome beast that looked like it weighed more than a small car. It roared through the shattered window, glass spraying in all directions, the engine so loud inside the small store that Ben's ears rang. The rider was huge. 6'4" at least, shoulders like a linebacker, arms covered in tattoos, wearing a leather vest with patches that read Black Scorpions MC and President. The bike skidded to a stop 3 feet from the counter, the rear tires smoking on the linoleum. The rider dismounted. Greg still had the knife. Still had Ben. But his grip had loosened, his attention completely focused on the man standing in front of a motorcycle that had just driven through a window. Let him go, the man said. His voice was deep, calm, the kind of calm that came from absolute certainty. Greg's hand tightened on Ben's shirt. Who the hell are you? I'm her father, the man said. And you've got about 5 seconds to step away from that kid before I lose my patience. More motorcycles pulled into the parking lot. Ben could see them through the broken window. 20, 30, maybe more, forming a semicircle around the store, headlights all pointing inward, turning the stop-and-go into a stage. Men dismounted. Big men. Tattooed men. Men wearing leather and carrying baseball bats and tire irons, and one guy in the back who was definitely holding a shotgun. Greg looked around wildly. The knife trembled in his hand. This is none of your business, he said, his voice higher now, panicky. She's my girlfriend. She's sick. I'm trying to help her. Is that what you call it? The president said, and there was something in his tone that made the temperature drop. Help. Breaking into her apartment. Tracking her phone. Following her for 6 weeks. I love her. You hurt her. You terrified her. You made her run barefoot in the rain. The president took a step forward. Then another. And now you've made the biggest mistake of your entire sorry life. What mistake? Greg's voice was shaking now. The president smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. You touched my daughter. Greg's eyes went wide. The knife dropped from his hand, clattering on the floor. I didn't. I wasn't. He looked around frantically at the bikers surrounding the store, at the president walking toward him, at Ben bleeding against the cigarette display. I didn't know. Nobody told me she was. Let the kid go, the president said again. Greg released Ben, who slumped against the counter, clutching his bleeding arm. The president looked at Ben. You alive, son? Ben nodded weakly. Yeah, I think so. You know where Chloe is? Cooler. In the back. She's locked in. The president turned to one of his men, a barrel-chested guy with a gray beard and arms like tree trunks. Church. Get her. Check if she's hurt. Church nodded and headed toward the back. The president turned back to Greg, who had backed up against the counter, hands raised, the knife forgotten on the floor. Please, Greg said. I'll leave. I'll never contact her again. I'll move states. Too late for that, the president said quietly. I didn't hurt her. I never laid a hand on her. I just wanted to talk to her. That's all. Just talk. You pulled a knife on a kid trying to protect her. You cut him. The president's voice was still calm. Matter of fact. You made her so scared she ran 3 miles in the rain with no shoes. You made my daughter cry. In the back, Ben heard the cooler door open. Heard a girl's voice, Chloe's voice, sob with relief. Dad. She burst through the employee door, wrapped in Church's leather jacket, and threw herself at her father. The president caught her with one arm, holding her tight, his other hand still pointed at Greg. You okay, baby girl? I'm okay. I'm okay now. She was shaking, crying into his shoulder. The president held her for a moment, then gently passed her to Church. Take her outside. Get her warm. Get her something to drink. No, Chloe said. Dad, don't. Outside, Chloe. Now. Something in his tone made her obey. Church led her out through the broken window, carefully avoiding the glass. The president turned back to Greg. Here's what's going to happen, he said conversationally. My boys are going to take you outside. We're going to have a talk about respect, about boundaries, about what happens to men who hurt women. No, Greg said, his voice breaking. No, please, I'll do anything. I have money. I can. I don't want your money. The president nodded to two of his men, both large, both expressionless. Take the trash out back. Leave no mess. They grabbed Greg by the arms. He struggled, screaming, begging, but they dragged him toward the back exit like he weighed nothing. Please, please. I'm sorry. I won't. The employee door closed. The screaming became muffled, then quiet, then silent. The president walked over to Ben, who was still slumped against the counter, pressing his hand against the cut on his arm. Let me see that. Ben held out his arm. The cut wasn't deep, maybe an inch long, bleeding but not gushing. The president pulled a first aid kit from somewhere in his vest, cleaned the wound with antiseptic that stung like fire, and wrapped it in gauze with surprising gentleness for someone with hands that large. You're going to need stitches, he said. But this'll hold for now. Thanks, Ben said weakly. No, thank you. The president met his eyes. You didn't have to help her. You don't know her. You're making minimum wage. You could have pointed to the back and stayed out of it. I couldn't do that. Most people would have. The president finished tying off the bandage. What's your name, son? Ben. Ben Martinez. Marcus Davidson. Most people call me Reaper. He held out his hand. Ben shook it. Reaper's grip was firm, but not crushing. You go to school, Ben? Yeah. Engineering. State University. That's expensive. Yeah. I'm about 50,000 in debt and counting. Reaper was quiet for a moment, looking around the destroyed store. The broken window. The motorcycle parked in the middle of the chip aisle. The scattered cigarettes and candy. The blood on the floor. This your store? No. I just work here. My boss is going to kill me. He's going to kill you? Kid, you just saved his employee from a psycho with a knife. You're a hero. Reaper pulled out his phone, tapped something. What time does your boss usually get here? 7. But he's going to see the cameras, and there are no cameras anymore. Reaper nodded toward the ceiling where the security cameras had been. Past tense. Someone had already smashed them. As far as anyone knows, a drunk driver lost control, crashed through the window, and drove off. You called it in, closed the store, went to the hospital for that cut. That's the story. But that's the story, Reaper repeated, his tone making it clear this wasn't a suggestion. My club has lawyers. Good ones. They'll handle the insurance, the repairs, all of it. Your boss gets a new window and a check for damages. You get this. He pulled out a business card, handed it to Ben. The card read, Davidson Construction and Engineering. Below that, a phone number. We build things, Reaper said. Roads, bridges, commercial buildings. We need engineers. Real ones, not the idiots who keep bidding projects they can't finish. You interested? Ben stared at the card. I haven't graduated yet. So graduate. Then call me. We pay for training. We cover tuition for employees finishing their degrees. We pay actual salaries, not minimum wage. He paused. And we take care of our people. Nobody messes with Davidson employees. Ever. Outside, the motorcycles were starting up again, engines roaring to life one by one. Church appeared in the broken window. Boss, we're ready. Reaper nodded, then looked back at Ben. Get that arm looked at. Take tomorrow night off. And think about the job offer. You've got guts, kid. That counts for something. He walked to his bike, straddled it, kicked the engine to life with a roar that shook the remaining windows. Reaper, Ben called out. Reaper looked back. The guy? Greg. He's... Reaper's expression didn't change. He made choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. Or not. He revved the engine. Get some rest, Ben. The motorcycle rolled back through the broken window, glass crunching under the tires, and joined the others in the parking lot. Ben watched through the broken window as the black scorpions formed up, a long column of bikes, Reaper at the front, Chloe riding behind Church somewhere in the middle. They pulled out onto Route 9, engines synchronized, pipes echoing off the empty road. Within 2 minutes, they were gone. The only evidence they'd been there was the broken window, the tire marks on the floor, and the business card in Ben's hand. Ben looked around the destroyed store, looked at the blood on his arm, looked at the calculus textbook still lying on the floor where he dropped it a lifetime ago. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Ambulance incoming. Tell them drunk driver. Medical bills covered. Take the weekend. R. Ben sat down on the floor, his back against the counter, and started to laugh. Not because anything was funny, because the alternative was crying, and he'd done enough of that tonight. The ambulance arrived 8 minutes later. Ben spent 3 hours in the emergency room getting stitches and answering questions from a bored police officer who seemed far more interested in his coffee than in Ben's story about a drunk driver. The cut required 12 stitches. The doctor said he was lucky, another inch, and it would have hit an artery. Ben didn't feel lucky. He felt exhausted. His boss, Mr. Chung, called while Ben was still in the waiting room, panicking about the broken window and the motorcycle tire marks, and did Ben know what happened, and was the money in the register okay, and did Ben call the police, and insurance will cover it, Ben said tiredly. The police already filed a report. Nobody was hurt. Register is fine. I'll be back Friday. You better be. I can't run the night shift alone. I'll be there, Ben promised and hung up. He took an Uber back to his apartment, a rundown 2-bedroom he shared with 3 other students, and collapsed into bed at 7:30 a.m. without bothering to change out of his bloody shirt. He woke up 12 hours later to his phone buzzing with texts. The first was from Mr. Chung, insurance adjuster coming tomorrow. Said they'll cover everything plus business interruption. Did you talk to them? The second was from an unknown number. Check your student account. Ben blinked at that one, then opened his laptop and logged into the university portal. His account balance, which yesterday had been $47,293.18, now read $0. Paid in full. Ben stared at the screen, refreshed it, stared at it again. $47,000. Just gone. Paid. He picked up his phone with shaking hands and called the number that had texted him. Reaper answered on the first ring. You see it. I can't accept this, Ben said. It's too much. I did what anyone would have. You did what almost nobody would have done. You stood between my daughter and a man with a knife. You took a blade for a stranger. Reaper's voice was matter of fact. The debt is cleared. Not a loan. Not something you pay back. It's done. But, Ben, let me tell you something about the world. Most people see trouble coming and they run. They duck. They hide. They tell themselves it's not their problem. And you know what? They're not wrong. Usually it isn't their problem. He paused. But you didn't run. You saw a terrified girl, and you helped her. No questions. No hesitation. That kind of courage is rare. And in my world, we pay our debts. Ben's eyes were burning. He rubbed them with the heel of his hand. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just finish that degree. Then call me about the job. We need good people, Ben. People who do the right thing even when it's hard. He paused. Chloe wants to talk to you. Hold on. There was a rustling sound, then a girl's voice. Ben. Chloe. Are you okay? I'm fine. I'm home. Dad had his guys sweep my apartment for bugs, change all the locks, install a security system. I'm safe now. Her voice was shaky but warm. I just wanted to say thank you. For hiding me. For not giving me up. You could have died. I'm glad you're safe. Me too. And Ben, if you ever need anything, I mean anything, you call my dad, okay? You're family now. That's how this works. I don't understand. The Black Scorpions take care of their own. And you're one of us now. Whether you want to be or not. She laughed softly. Get some rest. And seriously, call him about the job. Dad doesn't offer twice. She hung up. Ben sat on his bed in his cramped apartment, looking at the business card on his nightstand, at his laptop screen showing zero debt, at the bandage on his arm. He'd gone to work expecting to study calculus and mop floors. Instead, he'd hidden a girl in a freezer, fought off a stalker with a baseball bat, and apparently joined a motorcycle club. His roommate poked his head in. Dude, you okay? You were screaming in your sleep earlier. Yeah, Ben said. Yeah, I think I am. Cool. Also, you owe me for toilet paper. Some things never changed. Ben graduated in May with a 3.7 GPA and a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. He walked across the stage, shook the dean's hand, and accepted his diploma while his mother cried in the audience and his roommates hooted from the back row. 2 days later, he called the number on the business card. Reaper answered on the second ring. Took you long enough. I had finals. How'd you do? Magna cum laude. Good. We don't hire idiots. Reaper was quiet for a moment. You still interested in the job? Yeah, I am. Monday morning. 8 a.m. Main office on Industrial Boulevard. Wear boots. We're starting you on a bridge project. What's the pay? $75,000 to start. $90 after the first year if you don't screw up. Full benefits. Retirement. We'll cover your PE license when you're ready. Ben almost dropped the phone. Entry-level civil engineers usually started around 50,000, maybe 55 if they were lucky. That's way more than. We pay for quality. Don't make me regret it. Reaper paused. And Ben? Welcome to the family. The call ended. Ben stood in his apartment, looking at his degree hanging on the wall, at the scar on his arm that would never fully fade, at the future that had suddenly opened up in front of him. He thought about that night in October. About Chloe's terrified eyes. About Greg's knife. About the moment when he'd had to choose between safety and doing the right thing. He'd chosen right. And somehow, impossibly, the universe had rewarded him for it. Ben's phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Dad says you start Monday. Congrats. Come to the clubhouse Saturday. We're having a party. You're the guest of honor. Ben smiled and texted back. I'll be there. He had a feeling his life was about to get a lot more interesting. 6 months later, the bridge project was finished ahead of schedule and under budget. Ben had designed the stress calculations for the main support beams, work that would normally take a team of senior engineers weeks, but that he'd completed in 10 days. Reaper had looked at the numbers, shown them to 3 independent consultants, and then promoted Ben to junior project manager. His new salary was $95,000. Ben bought his mother a house. On a Saturday in November, exactly 1 year after the night at the Stop and Go, Ben rode his own motorcycle, a used Harley he'd bought with his first bonus check, to the Black Scorpions clubhouse for Chloe's birthday party. She was 20 now, enrolled in college, studying psychology, and completely free of Greg. The stalker had never been seen again. The police had filed a missing persons report, investigated for approximately a week, and then moved on to more pressing cases. Nobody asked questions. Nobody looked too hard. Ben parked his bike next to Church's, walked into the clubhouse, and was immediately handed a beer by a guy named Hammer who looked like he could bench press a truck. Martinez, heard you finished the bridge early. Team effort, Ben said. Bull. Reaper says you're the best engineer he's hired in 20 years. Hammer clapped him on the shoulder hard enough to rattle Ben's teeth. Keep it up, and you'll make full member by spring. Ben wasn't sure he wanted to be a full member of a motorcycle club that made people disappear. But he also wasn't sure he wanted to turn down the family that had given him everything. Chloe found him near the pool table. She'd cut her hair short, and she looked healthier than she had a year ago. Happier. Hey, hero, she said, hugging him. Glad you made it. Wouldn't miss it. Happy birthday. Thanks. 20 years old. Can you believe it? She looked around the clubhouse, at the bikers playing cards, at the music playing, at her father holding court by the bar. A year ago I thought I was going to die. Now I'm here. Free. Safe. Because of you. I just did what anyone. No. She cut him off gently. You did what almost nobody would have done. And I'm grateful. We're all grateful. She squeezed his hand. Your family, Ben. Don't forget that. Reaper walked over, carrying 2 bottles of beer. He handed one to Ben. Good work on the bridge, kid. Thanks, boss. Stop calling me boss. We're not at work. Reaper clinked his bottle against Ben's. You're doing good. Real good. Keep it up, and in 5 years you'll be running your own projects. That's the plan. Good plans. Reaper looked at his daughter, then back at Ben. You know, a year ago I was ready to burn the world down. Chloe was missing, some psycho was hunting her, and I couldn't find her. Longest 2 hours of my life. I can imagine. Then I got the call, and I found out some 20-year-old kid working minimum wage had put himself between my daughter and a knife. Reaper's expression was serious. You changed my life that night, Ben. Changed hers. You gave us both a future we almost didn't have. You paid my student loans, Ben said. You gave me a career. I think we're even. We'll never be even. Reaper smiled. But we can call it family. Church appeared, bellowing that the food was ready, and the party moved to the outdoor area where someone had set up a barbecue that smelled incredible. Ben spent the evening eating ribs, drinking beer, and listening to stories from bikers who'd seen more of the world, both its beauty and its darkness, than he'd ever imagined. Around midnight, as people started to drift home, Ben found himself on the clubhouse porch with Chloe, looking up at the stars. You ever think about that night? She asked quietly. Sometimes. You. All the time. She was quiet for a moment. I think about what would have happened if you'd pointed to the cooler. If you'd told Greg where I was. I wouldn't have. I know. That's what makes you different. She looked at him. You're a good person, Ben. Don't let this world change that. I'll try. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, listening to the distant sound of motorcycles on the highway. Ben thought about the journey that had brought him here. About a random Wednesday night in October. About a terrified girl and a baseball bat and a choice that had changed everything. He thought about Greg, wherever he was. Probably nowhere good. He thought about justice and vengeance and the thin line between them. And he thought about family. Not the one you're born into, but the one you choose. The one that chooses you. Ben. Chloe said. Yeah. Thank you. For everything. Anytime. She smiled. Let's hope there isn't a next time. Agreed. Inside the clubhouse, someone started playing music. The sound of laughter drifted out through the open windows. Ben finished his beer, said goodnight to Chloe, and walked to his motorcycle. He kick-started the engine, still getting used to the power, the rumble, the feeling of freedom that came with riding, and pulled out onto the road. The highway stretched ahead of him, dark and empty and full of possibility. Ben twisted the throttle and rode into the night, the stars above him, the road beneath him, and a future he'd never expected waiting somewhere ahead. He'd been a convenience store clerk making minimum wage. Now he was an engineer, a biker, a member of a family that would burn the world down to protect their own. And it had all started with one simple choice, to do the right thing, even when it was terrifying, even when it was dangerous, even when nobody would have blamed him for walking away. Ben smiled behind his helmet and rode faster, the engine roaring, the wind rushing past. Some nights change everything. This had been one of them.